So my really toxic, rich in-laws, they decide that they're going to gift me and my significant other a car. Well, everything comes with strings in this world, right? Get this. They want me to name my unborn children after them. Hey guys, I'm 23 and female, and I'm writing this to tell you my story about my annoying in-laws. Basically, they're helicopter parents to their only son, Waylon. See, Waylon is an amazing person who does not realize his parents were controlling him until very, very recently. They kept meddling in our marriage, and one day they insisted that we name our children after them. My mother-in-law, Bindy, and father-in-law, Wilbur, wanted to support us both emotionally and financially during our unexpected pregnancy at a very young age. We were glad that they wanted to support us because we really needed it. They did everything for us, and even though we didn't really want that much from them, they planned our wedding and our honeymoon and gave us a house to live in, and paid for most of our expenses. At first, it seemed like a sweet gesture, and we were extremely grateful, but it turns out they just wanted their money to control us and do what they wanted. They did not put thought into anything they did for us. They ended up making things worse for us, and we didn't complain and went along because we didn't want to seem ungrateful. They crossed the line when they expected us to name our kids after them. They decided to bribe us to get us to listen, and they promised us nice vehicles. When we told them we would not, they threw tantrums and called us useless. They told us we would never be able to handle things without them. My husband took on the challenge, and we pulled up in a Ferrari just to prove them wrong. I know it sounds weird and confusing, but let me explain things to you so that you can understand them better. I met Waylon at university, and we've been dating for 1.5 years before we got married. I had not planned on marrying him or even anyone at this point. We usually take precautions, but it's a miracle that one time we got drunk and did not take any, and I got pregnant. I panicked a lot at the moment because I didn't know how Waylon would react, and, well, I revealed my pregnancy to Waylon, and he was surprised but fully supportive. I trusted him, but there was a fear inside of me that he would run away or not take responsibility, so I spoke to him about it, and we did not have any plans. I was still in student debt, and he had his education funded by his parents, but he did not earn a penny. We decided just to carry the pregnancy to full term, and we're considering giving the baby up for adoption. We had no clue how anything worked at the time, and my ultrasound revealed that I was having twins. Every woman dreams about how her life will be in the future, and I've always prayed for twins. I felt like it was perfect, and Waylon knew I always wanted twins. After the visit to the doctor, he suggested that we should keep the babies, and I agreed as he spoke my mind. Waylon called his parents and told them about my pregnancy. Wilbur and Bindy told us that they would support us, and they were delighted to know that. We visited my mom and dad, and they were not happy. We somehow managed to convince them that we couldn't really do anything, and what's done is done. My parents put forth the condition we get married to one another, and that too before my belly would start to show. Waylon took me to his parents, and I was astonished at how, I entered the mansion and his parents called a humble abode. It was huge, a 9-bedroom lavish home, and the interiors were so nice. Their house was dreamy, and that my mouth was left wide open when I looked about. Wilbur had a chain of convenience stores, and Bindy was a casting agent before she retired. I knew they were rich, but I never imagined that they were that wealthy. We planned to get married within a month because I was already pregnant. My parents suggested we have a small, intimate wedding so that people would not notice that I got pregnant before the wedding. However, Wilbur and Bindy wanted to throw a grand wedding for their only son. I, being the bride, should have had a say in how my wedding went. Bindy called my mom and dad for a list of people they wanted to invite for what they had in mind was going to be a small, intimate wedding. Waylon and I were completing our last exams before we graduated. Bindy and Wilbur told us that they would take care of the wedding and that we should focus on our exams. We arrived a few days before the wedding, and I was so shocked to find that they had planned a huge affair. Bindy had bought the ugliest wedding dress and asked me to try it on for the last few fittings. She had the dress made with very loose fittings because she thought I would have grown in size. The alterations made the dress look very bad. The outfit I wore on the happiest day of my life was below my own expectations, in front of so many people I didn't even properly know. Contrary to what my parents wanted, the wedding had 100 guests and all of them were Waylon's family. No one from my family was invited because my parents did not know we were having so many people. They were very unhappy. The worst part of it was that everybody in the family knew that I was pregnant. So I had never met any of his extended family, and the only people I knew were our friends from university. Our friends, they were shocked to find out that I was pregnant. I didn't want the news of my pregnancy to come out this way because it was embarrassing for everyone to know that we were just trying to hide it. My wedding day was filled with whispers of people judging me for being pregnant before I got married. I didn't like the fact that I was, had the thing ruining by narrow-minded people who didn't even know me. Nobody was judging Waylon for getting me pregnant, but instead everybody called me lucky that he decided to marry me because it could have gone the other way. Well, a group of relatives came up to me and started bullying me about how I was so lucky to marry a rich guy. They hinted that I may have possibly gotten pregnant on purpose, and it was humiliating, and I tried to laugh it off, trying to take it as a joke, but Waylon stood up for me and told them to back off. Wilbur did not like the fact that Waylon intervened and told him off for disrespecting the guest. He caused a big scene, and I think Waylon was right because nobody could just go and insult the bride at her wedding. Overall, I would call the wedding an awkward disaster, no matter how pretty it was. Post-wedding, we were sent off on our honeymoon, which Bindy and Wilbur arranged for us. It was a tropical beach vacation, and I was excited about it. I'd never really been on a luxury vacation, and it started off well. We went to our extravagant room, but things got worse from there. Everything was pre-planned, including what we ate, and we went to dinner only to find out that there was a seafood platter arranged for us. Waylon had specifically told Bindy that I'm allergic to shellfish. We left the table without eating and got a local takeaway instead, which ruined our next day because, it didn't really do well with our stomachs. We thought the rest of our honeymoon would be better, but Bindy had foolishly planned adventurous water sports for us that were dangerous for me because I was pregnant. We spent the honeymoon lying on the beach or in our rooms. Initially you could say it was fun, but it got boring because my hormones made me cranky and impatient. On the last day, Bindy had arranged a local wine tasting experience for us, which was completely stupid because, again, I'm pregnant. I know I should have been grateful, but I did not believe Bindy did not put even a second thought into planning the honeymoon. When we came back home, a ready-to-move-in apartment was waiting for us, which had one bedroom for us and, of course, the nursery. So, I thought the gesture was quite sweet, so I forgave Bindy for the disastrous honeymoon and awful wedding dress in my mind. I moved all my stuff from my parents' house to my new home. I was excited about the new beginning with Waylon, and Waylon found himself a job, and I was so happy for him. I didn't want to find myself a permanent job until my babies were old enough, so I took up graphic design and became a freelancer. I got off to a slow start, but the number of projects increased as time went by. Everything was seemingly perfect, but I started to get annoyed by my in-laws' constant interference in our lives. They were around ours every day, and we didn't hire a cook because I liked cooking for Waylon. I liked cooking in general, and besides, we had a maid to do the rest of the chores that we hired by my in-laws to make my life easier. I had to cook for Bindy and Wilbur too, and it was very, very tiring. They were constantly just meddling in our lives, and I had to keep my household in order, Wilbur and Bindy just constantly dictated what we should do, and it was like we were obliged to follow what they were saying. We felt indebted to them because of their favors, and it was a huge burden on our shoulders. It restricted us from doing what we wanted, and we had no freedom. Wilbur would shout and get mad at Waylon if he didn't listen, and Bindy would pick faults in things that I would do and call me careless. She would constantly have suggestions for what I should and should not do, during my pregnancy. They were starting to get on my nerves, and I wanted to get rid of them from our life. They went on vacation for 2 weeks, and I felt so much peace after a long time. I started to despise them, and they made me frown. My hormones made me off the wall and impatient, and I was constantly fighting the urge to say something mean to them. They were trying to control everything in our lives, and it became so suffocating. I could see that Waylon felt the same, but it was left unsaid between us. I didn't want to offend him, and he could not say anything bad about his parents. After our gender revealing party, which obviously was planned, executed, and destroyed by none other than mother-in-law, Bindy and Wilbur, they announced that, quote, we all decided that my baby girl would be called Bindy Jr., and my baby boy would be called Wilbur Jr. Yeah, that's right, I choked on my water. Waylon's face turned red out of embarrassment, and we laughed awkwardly, trying to convince everybody it's a joke. Waylon told my in-laws that it was too early to announce the child's names, and that we would speak about this later. I was full of anxiety because I didn't want to name my kids after my in-laws because firstly, they have terrible names. Second, I didn't want to give my children hand-me-down names. And thirdly, I had full rights to decide my children's names. I didn't want anyone to take that right away from me. I was very high-key stressed out. To the max, and I was about to blow up in anger. We went to their house to talk, and I wanted to scream in their faces, but we spoke very respectfully, keeping in mind that they had only good intentions. They were trying so hard to persuade us, and Wilbur knew that Waylon wanted to buy a vehicle, so he bribed us by promising to buy us nice cars if we named our kids after them. We politely told them that we would rather not have the cars than have our kids be called something they're going to be bullied for. They weren't understanding of us, and slowly their tone went from persuasive to angry. They called us ungrateful and expected us to comply after all the things that they did for us. They challenged that we would not even be able to last a week without their help. And they accused us of being careless and that we would probably have killed the babies by now if it wasn't for their support, of course. They were making pretty big accusations against us, calling us useless without them, and Waylon took their words to heart, and told them that we did not need them. It wasn't all false because Waylon and I were earning a pretty decent amount a month, and it was enough to support our basic needs, including the baby's expenses and, if not, the lavish life provided to us by my in-laws. We stormed out with no regret for what we've done. I'm not gonna lie, but Waylon's ego was kind of hurt by Wilbur's words. I could have never anticipated what Waylon was about to do. Waylon worked at a job during our college years, and since his expenses were covered by his parents, he had quite a lot saved up from what he had earned until now. He had also made pretty good investments that gave him good returns and had an impressive portfolio. His savings were no secret to me, and I thought that they would be useful in the future. But Waylon spent his entire savings and bought a Ferrari. At first, I thought he was crazy for doing what he did, but the next day he told me early in the morning that we were going for a drive. So we hopped into the car and we went for that drive. Bindy and Wilbur were on their morning walk, and we slowed down beside them, making sure that they would notice us. They got the biggest shock of their lives. It was extremely satisfying to see their faces, and at the very moment I did not regret our Ferrari at all. It was the best decision of our lives, and we had the best time that day. I felt liberated that day and free from the suffocation that my in-laws had imposed on us. Until that day, they kept blowing up our phones to remind us that we're nothing without them, and they would forgive us if we just named our kids after them. After that, they just stopped calling us and went very, very quiet. I guess that taught them. They underestimated us, and we taught them a lesson. Update number 1. I'm so overwhelmed by the love I received from my post. Yes, I admit that it was really petty of Waylon to buy a Ferrari, and we kind of did regret it later, which I'll tell you why. Before I give you updates on what happened next, I would like to tell you all that my baby has been born. Both of them, and they're healthy. When they were born, we thought that we would lose them, but they're fine now. And yes, we will not be calling them Wilbur and Bindy. So here's my crazy birth story. I was about 2 weeks away from my due date when we got an eviction notice from my in-laws, and we only had 3 days to vacate. The reason was that we had not paid rent. Waylon called them to pay the rent, but they wanted us to get out. It was very short notice for us, and I was pregnant. We didn't have the energy to argue because they threatened to call the police. My safety was of utmost importance to Waylon, so we found another apartment for us. It was small and cramped, but it was the best that he could do. We had recently bought baby stuff for our nursery, and it completely filled the apartment. We had just a little room left to accommodate a bed and a cupboard for us. It would mean that we would have to live out of suitcases until we found a better home. We didn't have much saved because we spent it all on the Ferrari, and it was all we could manage. That's when we regretted it. I kept cursing my in-laws because they picked the worst time to kick us out. The movie made me stressed out, and I went into hypertension. I often had panic attacks, and I got one when we were moving out. I felt uncomfortable, so Waylon took me to the hospital, and we had to induce birth immediately because my raised blood pressure caused a lack of oxygen supply to my babies. They would have died if we had gone to the doctor any later. My babies had to be kept on life support for more than a week, and we decided not to call my in-laws because of all the pain that they had caused us, especially during such a feeble time. My parents came rushing to the hospital when my babies were born. They helped me with everything, and my house was a mess because we had just moved, and my poor mom had arthritis, but my mom and dad helped by organizing my entire house to make sure it was ready for the babies. My mom agreed to stay with me so that she could help me care for the babies. It's especially hard because there's 2 of them. Moreover, now we need the money more than ever. Waylon spent all the money he had saved on the Ferrari, and I bought a lot of baby stuff. I still had my student debts, and I had initially planned to take a break from work, but I have to earn money to support our family since we have to pay for rent now. My dad gifted us a cupboard and a couch for our apartment. They've been so kind and supportive, which made Waylon and I realize that support isn't always financial, and there's more to it than giving money. My in-laws chose their egos over humanity and kicked us out when we most needed the support. We thought that they were helping us, but they were just using their money to control us. I'm grateful for the financial help, and I don't want to sound entitled, but they did not lack the money. And it's easy for them to financially support us. They weren't going out of their way like my amazing parents are. They even ruined my wedding and my baby's gender revealing party, and the worst thing, they ruined the birth of my babies, and I almost killed them. Waylon's decided to cut ties with them permanently after everything they did. He admits to feeling free from their helicopter parenting and wishes that things could have been a bit different. We were thinking of selling our Ferrari, but it kinda means something to us now, and we're trying our best to raise this family, you know. We're earning pretty decent money, but we don't have anything saved up. Thanks to my mom's support, we don't have to hire a nanny just yet. Although I was sore, tired, and cranky, and I didn't want to work, I was left with no choice. I'd also like to thank Waylon for being the most supportive husband. A year ago, I never thought I'd be here, but I'm proud of the family that we've built, and I will never regret it. I love them all. Update number 2. So, I've received a lot of comments telling me that we should have sold our car, and that we care about the car more than our babies. Let me clear the air. We did not know our in-laws were going to kick us out of our homes. Waylon's always wanted to buy a nice car, and it's something he's passionate about. So he ticked one of his bucket list, and things are tough, but we're not in such dire needs that we needed to sell our beloved car. We will never get the amount of money we spent on our car back, and it's just a waste of money. I know fuel costs are high, but again, it's been on our bucket list, and we might as well just have it rather than buy it later. Also, we occasionally take out our Ferrari, but for everyday needs, I have my own car that my parents gave me when I turned 18. For others who have been asking what we finally named our babies, we would like to tell you that my baby boy is called Aiden, and my baby girl is called Adeline. I would like to update you because the situation got worse. My in-laws wanted to see their grandchildren, so we decided not to be petty. Well, guess what? My in-laws were still pretty much hell-bent on naming our kids after them. So we politely asked them to leave, and they called us ungrateful in 20 different languages. They started to blow up our phones to ask us to return the money they spent on Waylon's education and our wedding. They also added other expenses and sent a long list along with receipts. This hurt Waylon to the extent that he spent hours crying. He's not the kind of person who cries, and unfortunately he always keeps his feelings hidden. This time he didn't, and he had a massive emotional outburst, and could not stand to see my husband like that. I made him emotionally and mentally sick. I had to console my husband and take care of my babies, and it really burdened me at the time. My husband decided that he would work hard to return all the money that they spent on him, because it was damaging to his self-respect. Our friends then made us understand that it was their choice to spend the money on all those things. They're not doing it because they need money, they're just doing it to spite us. Upon insistence from our friends, we decided not to be adamant about not paying them back. We explained to them over the phone that it was their choice to do so, and they could not just ask for the money back on such short notice, especially when they're the ones who wanted a big wedding and to do all those things for us willingly. When we told them this, they started crying to all our relatives for attention, and suddenly I was made to be the villain. They all accused me of influencing Waylon and keeping him away from his parents. We had so many people visit and blow up our phones. All the mean things that they were saying to us were hurtful, and it was getting hard to ignore. We didn't want our babies to be growing up thinking that their parents were bad people either. We knew that we had to do something. So we decided to file a case against them for mentally harassing us. They argued that they kicked us out because we didn't pay rent. We didn't have any agreements with them, and they didn't have any proof that they asked for rent. Their lawyer argued that it was their choice to ask us to vacate, and we made the point that the time given to vacate was too short. It caused so much distress that our babies almost died. We had medical reports that proved that my babies were almost dead. The case was a complicated family matter, and they argued that we can't cut ties and we should return the money if we want to. The court told them that it was their choice to pay for it, and since we didn't have an agreement that we would return their money, they could not ask for it back. Their trials were mostly heartbreaking for Waylon because his parents were acting crazy. The court favored us, and they suggested that we opt for family counseling. Waylon and I were willing to make amends, but Wilbur and Bindy were not willing to accept that they were wrong. They had to pay us for whatever inconvenience we went through because of their behavior. Most of their family was present as well, so they realized that who were the real jerks. We proved our point, and everyone went quiet after that, and they all agreed and sympathized with us. We didn't want to go to this extent and wanted to handle things quietly. Bindy and Wilbur broke all hopes of reconciliation, and now Waylon has a bitter relationship with his own parents. They would not stop blaming me, but they're the a-holes for wanting to control their child. We have a full choice of what to name our kids, and they aren't entitled to control us just because they're paying for us. It's hard for them to understand, and it's really hurting my husband, who's finding it difficult to come to terms with what his parents did. Final update. I'm here with another update, and I have to add this because it's really crazy. We were just living our normal lives, and everything was going okay. We've hired a nanny for our babies, and we initially thought of moving out of our cramped apartment, but we realized we don't need that much space, and we would rather save that money on rent and save up to buy a house instead. I also got a really good high-paying job, and we're managing the expenses quite well and proving Waylon's parents wrong. They thought we would not be able to make it without them, but here we are. We're making little adjustments in our lifestyles so we can give our kids the best life. It hasn't been easy parenting twins. We've struggled a lot, and it wasn't for my mom. I don't know what the hell we would have gone through trying to manage 2 babies. We were leading a happy and peaceful life, but then my babies contracted a virus that affected their lungs. It's become a really difficult thing to manage, and it was a dreadful situation for the 2 of us. It was nothing life-threatening, but it was very serious, and they needed intensive care. Waylon and I were scared for our babies. They were crying all the time, and they had very high temperatures. We were managing 2 babies, and we were losing sleep, and we were tired. They weren't drinking milk properly because they had issues breathing through their noses, and when your child's starving, it's hard to do anything when you're a parent. The word got out, and my in-laws chose that very fragile moment in our lives to play their move and attack us right where it hurts the most. My children were crying so much, and we had just come home from the doctors. They were on medication, and we were trying to soothe them. That's when CPS officers arrived at our doorstep. The officers assessed the situation, and they saw our babies cry, took them into their care, and checked them to see why they were crying. They interviewed us to see what was wrong, and we explained that our babies are very sick and that we're doing our best to take care of them. Our in-laws had reported us and claimed that our babies got ill because of our negligence. They checked our babies' medical histories, and because they were sick at birth too, they decided to take care of our babies and take them into custody until they completed their investigation. Bindy and Wilbur reported that we were keeping the babies in poor living conditions, and our nanny was neglecting them too. I was anxious because our babies were sick and were taken away from us. The officers started their investigation by searching our houses. They made us do a drug test and assessed us for legal history as well as our financial situation. I would not stop crying because my babies were away from me. I was living in fear of losing them. Their investigation lasted a whole week, and I wanted to feed my babies, but I wasn't allowed to see them. I had to sit for hours and pump for my babies while dealing with the stress that they weren't there. Our nanny was scrutinized too. After a week of being taken away from us, CPS decided to give us back our babies after their investigation. We were so happy, but they told us that they would continue monitoring us. After a proper investigation, they ended our case, and we were cleared of any suspicions about us. We could finally take a breather because we knew that they would not take our babies from us. We knew that we were great parents, but we doubted the system. We called my in-laws to give them a piece of our minds, and we called the police on them because all of our trouble they were causing us. The police counseled them and explained to them that they were wasting the time of authorities because of their family issues. So, they let them off with a warning and told them that they would have to go to jail if they continued to do so. I think they accepted defeat because after a long voicemail from them telling us that they're never contacting us again and that we can go to hell, we haven't heard from them. I hope it stays that way because Waylon and I don't want them in our lives after everything they've put us and our babies through. They're just cheap, attention-seeking jerks who don't deserve us or to see their grandchildren. So getting CPS involved in today's story has to be the downfall of the relationship between OP and the in-laws. I mean, I couldn't even imagine to have myself in this situation, and these in-laws were just so relentless. They would do anything to get their points across and to basically do what they wanted to do. It was ridiculous, and I want to know what you guys thought about today's story. So let's discuss what you would have done down below in the comment section, guys. I would love to see your comments. I love to read every single one of the comments that I can see. And besides that, guys, it's just good to get opinions from other people. So drop that down below. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every single day. And if you guys want to be a part of these day-to-day readings, consider subscribing to the channel. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. And of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.